It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had spent weeks planning the perfect engagement party. Everything was set. The house was decorated, the food was prepared, and I was ready to announce to the world that Kim, my girlfriend of 7 years, had said yes. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, each one more perfect than the last. The excitement bubbling inside me was almost unbearable. I could hardly wait for everyone to gather, to see the look on Kim's face as I finally made this announcement. This was the moment I had been working towards, the culmination of everything we had built together. I felt like I was floating, caught in the glow of happiness. But something shifted almost imperceptibly at first. It was small, almost insignificant, just a feeling, a shift in the air. And yet, that tiny feeling would grow, turning my whole world upside down in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The laughter and chatter of the party surrounded me, but as I moved from one conversation to another, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The house was full of life. Friends, family, everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. But then there was Kim. She had been by my side all evening, but now she had vanished. The minutes ticked by and I started to notice her absence. It wasn't like her to slip away without a word, especially not during something so important to us both. I tried to shake it off, telling myself that maybe she was just taking a moment for herself, but the longer she was gone, the more unsettled I became. It was like the air had thickened around me, the joy of the party suddenly feeling distant. Something was off and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The longer Kim stayed gone, the more my concern twisted into something darker. I told myself I was being paranoid, but that small, nagging feeling kept growing. Something wasn't right. I excused myself from the crowd, telling myself I just needed to find her. I walked through the house, my heart thudding louder with each step. The bathroom was empty. I couldn't understand why she'd be hiding. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I stepped into the backyard, that's when everything shifted. There, in the dim light, I saw them. Kim and Ron, my brother, my flesh and blood, standing close, too close. Their faces were inches apart, and before I could even process what was happening, they kissed. Time froze. My body went numb. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, completely frozen, watching what should have been an impossible sight. This was my reality now. This was my life unraveling in the most unimaginable way. I don't know how long I stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. But the shock didn't last long. Anger rushed in like a tidal wave, hot and suffocating. Without thinking, I stormed toward them, my voice cutting through the silence. "What the hell is going on?" I yelled, the words raw and trembling with rage. Kim and Ron froze, eyes wide with panic, and then they tried to brush it off. "It's not what it looks like," Ron stammered, stepping away from Kim as if that somehow made it better. Kim, her face flushed, tried to form some explanation, her voice shaky. "We didn't mean," she started, but I cut her off, the words spilling out faster than I could control. "Don't you dare," I shouted, my chest tight with disbelief. "You can't lie your way out of this. I saw it. I saw everything." They tried to deny it, to tell me it was a mistake, but their words felt like hollow excuses, twisting the knife deeper. There was no mistaking it. The betrayal was real, and I could no longer pretend I hadn't seen what I had. The room, once alive with laughter and celebration, fell completely silent as I stood there, seething with disbelief. My heart was pounding in my chest, my throat tight as I tried to catch my breath. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. But it didn't matter anymore. I turned to face the crowd, my voice trembling but firm. "The engagement is over," I said, the words escaping me before I could stop them. I looked around at the shocked faces, my parents, friends, everyone who had been there to celebrate with us just moments ago. Kim, she betrayed me. And Ron. I couldn't even finish his name without the anger choking me. My own brother. The room was still, everyone too stunned to speak. Kim's face turned pale as the reality of what was happening sank in, her eyes filling with tears. But it wasn't the apology I needed, It was too late for that. Ron stood there, his face flushed with guilt, but still trying to justify his actions. I couldn't listen to it anymore. I don't want anything to do with either of you, I added, my voice rising. I pointed to the door. Get out. Kim's protest was a weak, desperate attempt to make this somehow okay, but I couldn't hear it. I couldn't be there, not with them, not in this house, not after everything they had done. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The life that had once been in the room now felt like it had been drained out, leaving only the unbearable weight of betrayal. Kim's voice cracked as she tried to explain herself, but her words only made everything worse. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, her eyes wide with a mix of guilt and defiance. I only stayed with you because I needed someone to go to prom with in high school. I realized over the years that I was in love with Ron, not you. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. All those years, all the memories I had held on to, now felt like nothing more than a lie. She wasn't finished, though. You were always so controlling, she continued, her voice gaining strength. So focused on work, so distant. I couldn't take it anymore. Each word stung more than the last. It felt like she was twisting everything I thought we had into something unrecognizable. The love we shared, the trust we built, she was just erasing it, rewriting our history like it had meant nothing. You always made me feel like I wasn't enough, she added, her voice shaking with a false sense of justification. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to paint me as the villain, as if I was the one who had wronged her. The pain inside me flared, burning through the numbness. My mind screamed with frustration, but I stayed silent, unable to find the words to fight back. How could she do this? How could she turn everything I knew into this twisted narrative? The more she spoke, the more the anger inside me swelled, but it was nothing compared to the heartbreak. I wanted to scream at her, to make her see how wrong she was, but I was drowning in everything she was throwing at me. The anger in me was a storm now, and I couldn't contain it any longer. I turned to Kim and Ron, my voice shaking with fury. I said, get out. Both of you. I pointed to the door, my hand trembling with the weight of what I was about to do. Kim's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't find it in me to care anymore. She had already torn my heart to pieces. Ron opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't stand another word from him. Now, I shouted, the word cutting through the room like a knife. They left, but the damage wasn't done. My parents, who had stood by and watched the entire thing unfold, followed me into the room. They were more concerned with keeping the peace than they were with supporting me. My mom, ever the peacemaker, sighed. It's not that bad. These things happen, you know. She glanced at my father, who nodded in agreement. You need to understand, sometimes love doesn't make sense. Kim and Ron, they didn't mean to hurt you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were justifying it. They were downplaying what had just happened. Ron, my own brother, had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and they were trying to make it seem like it wasn't a big deal. You need to be the bigger person, my father added, his tone flat. You don't want to throw away your family over something like this. It felt like they were standing in another world, one where betrayal was just a minor inconvenience. I wanted to scream, to make them see the hurt, the humiliation, but their words just bounced off me. They didn't get it. Family is supposed to have your back, I said, my voice quiet but firm. But I guess that's not true, is it? Their silence in response was all I needed to hear. They weren't on my side, not really. They wanted peace, but I needed truth. I needed justice. And in that moment it became clear, I couldn't count on them. The next morning I expected the world to feel different, but it didn't. I woke up to an empty house, the chaos of the night before still hanging in the air. The party was over, and so was everything I thought I knew about my life. I thought my family would be there for me, that they would see what Kim and Ron had done and stand by my side. But when they called me the next day, I realized I was wrong. My mom started talking like nothing had happened, as if it was just a small misunderstanding. These things happen, she said, her voice too calm, too dismissive. She actually told me that it was natural for Kim to fall out of love with me. That was when the first crack in my trust began to widen. I could hardly believe it. My mom, my own mother, was defending Kim's betrayal, downplaying it like it was just some casual fling. And then my dad. His advice was even worse. You need to be the bigger person, he said, as if forgiving them would somehow make everything okay. Sometimes people end up with who they're meant to be with. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could they justify this? How could they defend Ron, who had stabbed me in the back, and Kim, who had destroyed everything we had built? I tried to explain how humiliating it was, how wrong it felt, but they just wouldn't listen. They weren't on my side. They weren't even trying to understand. All they cared about was keeping the peace, even if it meant siding with the people who had hurt me the most. That was when it hit me. I was alone. They weren't supporting me. They were supporting them. My family, the people I had always counted on, had chosen Kim and Ron over me. And in that moment, I realized how much I had been living for others, how much my whole life had been shaped by what they wanted from me. Now that life felt like a lie. I didn't know who I was anymore or where I fit in this world. I only knew that the people I thought I could trust, the people I thought would always have my back, were the very ones who had let me down. I spent days replaying everything in my mind, those final moments with Kim and Ron, the shock, the anger, the betrayal. But it wasn't just them who had broken me. It was my family. They hadn't stood by me. They hadn't seen how deep the hurt ran. Instead, they defended the people who had destroyed everything I believed in. The realization hit me hard like a slap in the face. These were the people I had trusted most in the world, and yet they had chosen to side with the ones who hurt me. I had tried over and over to explain myself, to get them to see that this wasn't just some small mistake. But no matter what I said, no matter how much pain I poured into my words, they didn't listen. And that's when I knew. I had to let go. I couldn't keep fighting for people who wouldn't fight for me. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I cut ties with them. I blocked their numbers, stopped taking their calls, ignored their voicemails. I couldn't stay in that place, couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed to heal, to rebuild my life without the weight of their expectations, their manipulation. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself. I didn't know where this path would take me, but I couldn't keep clinging to a past that no longer existed. I was done trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I was walking away, and it was terrifying. But it was also the only way forward. 2 years had passed, and I thought I had finally found a way to live without the constant weight of the past. I had rebuilt my life, carved out a space where I could breathe, where I could be free from the chaos that had once consumed me. I didn't think about Kim or Ron anymore, not often at least. They were part of a past I was trying to forget. But then one afternoon my phone rang. I stared at the screen, her name flashing on it. My mother. For a moment I hesitated. The last time I'd spoken to her had been that final, painful confrontation, and I hadn't heard from her since. But curiosity won out. I answered. Her voice on the other end was different, strained, frantic. "It's Kim and Ron," she said, her words rushing out in a frantic jumble. "They've been in a car accident. It's bad. They're both in critical condition." A cold wave of shock hit me, but mixed in with it was something else, a strange detachment. I felt pity for them, sure, but it didn't change anything. Not anymore. Then she told me something that rocked me to my core. Kim had been pregnant. They had a son. A baby. My nephew. The news hit me like a punch, but it didn't knock me down. Instead, it just made everything clearer. I felt a knot form in my stomach, the reality of the situation sinking in. My family was still trying to pull me back into their mess, trying to get me to take responsibility for this child, this nephew I didn't even know existed. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go back to that place, to those people. Not after everything that had happened. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the emotional storm inside me. "I'm not going to take care of him. I'm sorry, but I can't do it." My mother's voice broke, her desperation clear. She tried to guilt me, saying I was abandoning a child who had nothing to do with the past, but I stood firm. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their world. I had worked too hard to find peace, and I wasn't going to let it slip away now. I hung up, blocking their numbers once again, sealing off that part of my life for good. It wasn't about the baby, it wasn't about guilt, it was about protecting myself, about keeping the peace I had fought so hard to find. And that peace was worth more than any obligation, more than any family that had turned their back on me.